those for our paid membership, our premier membership, as well as work in Alec's Academy in our private community to give feedback on people's hands and share strategies and insights that have helped, that he's learned on his journey, as well as do private coaching with us. And Coach Joel has a really interesting background, very technical and math-based in data analysis. So, sorry, I gotta pause myself here. And so his data analysis background has led him to be very privy to using HUDs and really getting into the weeds of certain situations that people can look at their stats to help improve when they're playing online poker. So he's carved out a unique niche for himself with that style of coaching, although he is very familiar and very good at live poker. Pre-COVID, playing 5-10 and doing very well at those limits, transitioned to online during COVID and has been coaching as well over the past year as there's been a need for that, and he's improved in his game. We worked together in a coaching relationship in the past, and then that was about a year and a half ago, and then brought him on board to Conscious Poker to help grow our base and be able to serve more people through our coaching as well. So anyway, Coach Joel, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alec. Thanks for that introduction. I can't help but appreciate how this has all come full circle, from receiving coaching from you to now being a coach myself. And like you said, I was a live poker grinder prior to the pandemic. I was playing at the Encore Casino in Boston. I was playing 5-10 there. Really loved playing there. Unfortunately, had to make some adjustments with the pandemic hitting. So had to get used to online poker and also use that time to start coaching myself. And it's been really rewarding. As much as I love playing poker, in all honesty, I think I like coaching just as much, because I just love seeing people that are willing to work hard and reach their own poker goals.
Yeah, it is cool. I think it's very rewarding, and it's exciting to see the light bulb go on in someone else and help them on their journey. And it's like, there's not like one sort of path to getting everything you want out of poker. And so you can only get so much as a player, and then at some point it becomes about giving back and helping other people, and that's really exciting as well. And it's an evolution I think, in my journey at least, from playing poker and then teaching poker and then coaching poker. It's really cool to see that progress. So I totally relate to you there. I also think it's made me a better player, frankly, because you're forced to understand the challenges and struggles of other people, and then really solve those problems for other people. And so it forces you to really, communicate better and understand your own thoughts and your own process in a way that's more clear, and that makes, I think, me a better player. So I think it's actually been very helpful. Anyway, I want to dive into, I want to thank everyone for being here. Brandon, Michelle, thanks for being here. I know there's more of you out there watching. Appreciate your guys' attention today. I wanted to dive in right away to give, those people watching, respect their time, insights into our topics for today. So the three things we're going to cover, the three fastest ways to improve at poker. And I know you and I see very eye to eye on this first one, which is fundamentals and pre-flop play. So the first way to improve at poker is definitely work on your fundamentals and pre-flop play. And I know, I'll let you share your insights, but I know that at least in my private coaching practice, when I look at my clients' hands, and I have, as you know, we have a very specific exercise where we have our clients send us every single hand they play during a session. So we get to see not just one or two or three interesting hands, but we get to see 20, 30, 40 hands that they've played. There's pretty much never a situation where pre-flop fundamentals don't come into play. In other words, it almost always is the case where pre-flop fundamentals are something that is a point of focus. And typically the adjustment is that people need to play fewer hands. And I know that's boring, it's not sexy, it's not what people want to hear, it avoids this fancy play syndrome, but really it's the classic typical adjustment that is the lowest hanging fruit that people can make, is just to play stronger ranges, play fewer hands, focus on playing stronger ranges pre-flop. And I think that's something that I see pretty much in every client I work with. And it's not to say that you have to be the tightest player at the table. That's not what I'm advocating at all. But it's about, first and foremost, cutting off the fat, as I like to say. It's like if most people play, let's say 20% of hands when they should be playing 15, or they play 30% of hands and they should be playing 15 or 20, depending on the position. And so there's always room to trim around the edges. And I think this is the number one simple adjustment you can make. It's the equivalent in a diet of cutting out, fast food and soda. It's like easy lose 10 pounds. And if people just made this one adjustment, they played fewer hands, they played stronger hands, they focused on playing hands that were stronger than their opponent's range, and they focused on, 3-betting with their strong hands and raising only when they have good hands, not calling 3-bets, especially out of position with offsuit hands, make the basic simple adjustments that you would make, I think people would see an immediate improvement in their game. And I noticed in working with clients, when they make these improvements, they come back to me a week or 2 weeks later, they play another session, they notice right away that they're in fewer tough situations, there's less variance in their play overall, they get more respect with their image because they're playing fewer hands, and so they're getting more respect for their bets on later streets. Their image sort of compounds over time and allows them to get away with other plays, and ultimately their bottom line improves. So I think that's the number one adjustment. I know, Coach Joel, you've worked with numerous clients where you've seen this as well. What are your thoughts?
Well, I couldn't agree more with what you already said. And, I think everything begins with just a simple decision. And a lot of players, they get enticed by some pretty cards that they receive pre-flop. It's a suited hand, it looks fun, and it's only $10 or $15. So they kind of throw it in without thinking too much about it with a 5-6 suited type hand from under the gun or something like that from early position. And they don't realize that every single decision is going to compound from there. So you may be playing for only $10 or $15 up front, but by the river, it's going to be an expensive pot. And often you catch a piece of the flop and it leads you to turn into the river, and all of a sudden you may have just been wanting to play something and get lucky, but you wind up in a much bigger pot than you thought. And I've had clients come to me and say, look at this cooler, how unlucky was I? And yeah, some of the time the post-flop events that occur are a form of being coolered, but it's a spot you didn't need to be in the first place. So just weeding out some of that, getting rid of the fat, like you said. I had a client that came to me and he was talking about, I'm out of position with H10 offsuit or King Jack offsuit or Queen Jack. And how do I play these hands? I keep hitting top pair. I'm in this hard spot. I don't know if he has it or he's bluffing me. And I said, why? I don't really know what the answer is in this particular spot post-flop. The easiest solution is just not to be in this spot in the first place. And so just trimming that fat from his game was immensely helpful. I think what you said about players worrying about the game becoming boring is a really important fear to address, because if you're honest with yourself, I don't think most players are having fun while they're losing money with marginal hands. They think that they are, but in reality, if you're playing 8-9 offsuits and you're in some big pot and you lose $500, there's nothing fun about that. So it's really just kind of isolating, what is it about poker where you're having the most fun? And generally it's when you're winning and you're playing a solid strategy. And, like you said, the best players are usually not playing that many hands. Maybe they're only playing 20% of the time overall, but it's not like they're just doing nothing the other 80%. They're really observing their opponents and their opponents' tendencies, and it makes for a situation where once they get into a hand and they're willing to go far with it, they really have a lot more information that they can base their decision off of. And so it's kind of a double benefit. They're in there with better hands, and they've been paying attention when they've been out of hands, which some players struggle to do when they're just playing too much.
Yeah, I love what you said there. Sorry, I didn't pin. Thank you for that. And I love what you said there. Very, very interesting feedback. Thank you for adding on to these points. I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that playing fewer hands allows you to be more in control. And like you said, nobody likes to feel like the game is taken out from under them, and also nobody likes to play when they're losing. And so when you play fewer hands, you're more likely to be winning, you're more likely to be in a positive mindset, and it feels better because you feel like you're in control of your own outcome. You're in control of your own results because you're putting the odds in your favor, and that feeling sort of like brings confidence to one's game. And it allows for the vicious cycle of playing too many hands, being not having strong enough holdings later on in the hand, compensating by bluffing, leading to poor play, poor decision-making, losing big pots, and then that vicious cycle sort of compounds. It sort of transitions that to the virtuous cycle of playing stronger hands, playing stronger ranges, having stronger hands overall, because you're playing stronger hands, so more likely you're going to make something good, and you're going to have a hand you can value bet. You're going to be more likely to win at showdown. It's easier to be in this positive mindset, which just compounds because you're playing well, you're making good hands, you're playing strong hands, your bluffs are getting through because your opponents give you respect. Most of the time you have it, and then you're winning, and now you're playing in this positive mindset. I also think people need to kind of really, and I've had this conversation with a few clients, it's really about reshifting your approach to playing poker for being something that is, oh, sorry, we're losing battery here. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, so I think one other thing is really changing your approach to playing poker from something that is you're there to go have fun and blow off steam to you're there to actually win and crush the games. And I think if you do that, you're going to see that it's going to lead to this fundamental decisions of playing fewer hands, playing stronger ranges. And it's really about having a different purpose, a different approach for playing poker. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think just playing too many hands, it puts you in spots where you don't have great options. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to overfold? Are you going to call down with these weaker hands? It just makes your decision-making process so much harder. And a lot of players, one of the tough things is a lot of the time you're looking around the table and you observe what other players are playing. And you say, hey, well, that guy's playing 9-10 offsuit. That guy's limping with ace-deuce off. Like, of course I can play this hand. But not realizing that your edge is coming from not playing those same hands and, playing a tighter range in these loose games is what will ultimately separate you.
Yeah, I mean, your win rate is the difference in skill between you and your opponents. So if you're playing stronger ranges than them, you're in there with a better expectation, a better chance of winning. That is where your edge comes. And when you see, it's like two wrongs don't make a right. When you see people playing poor hands, especially it's frustrating when they're getting lucky and they start to win playing these bad hands. They call 3-bets with hands they shouldn't. Of course, it seems like they always get lucky and they win these huge pots. You're seeing this roller coaster variance, and when that variance is on the upswing, it feels like, oh my gosh, I should be in there too. I should be in there gambling. But remember that the math, the numbers never lie, and that will catch up with you. And it's the long-term approach that you're really trying to take here, and thinking with that long-term mindset of, is this play profitable or not? And in the long term, if I make this play 10,000 times, will I show a profit? And that's the fundamental framework with which you got to make decisions. So I want to open it up for a question here, not necessarily on the Zoom call. We're going to potentially do that at the end of the stream. Be sure to stay tuned for that. I just want to reset the room quickly. We are covering the 3 fastest ways to improve at poker. Number 1 is play fewer hands, have stronger fundamentals. If you want to hop on the Zoom call with us and ask questions live, the link is in the description below, and you can hop on at the end of our call and we will take questions. In the meantime, drop your questions in the chat. Scott, Michelle, Brandon, Chris, Sebastian, Julian, Diz, Sushant, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. If I see some cool questions, we will address them. I think, Joel, why don't we move on to point number 2? We could swing back around to this if someone has a question as well. Why don't you lead off with number 2 and the second fastest way to improve at poker, the low-hanging fruit, the 3 things to do.
Totally. This is a big one, and this is mental game. Really making sure that you're doing all the right things to put yourself in the best headspace possible when you sit down at the poker table. And, Alec, I think we both know players that have all the technical skills to be great at poker.
Yeah.
But when something doesn't go their way, they just go off the rails. And tilt is a major money suck in this game. And, it's so important to be doing the things away from the table that are going to put you in a position to be successful while playing poker. And the great thing about being a coach is, like, a lot of these things are helpful to your clients, like, well outside of poker, helping them exercise before a session so that they're more relaxed, telling them to develop a meditation practice, eat right, sleep right. Like, a lot of the things that we all know are important to do to take care of ourselves, but now we have kind of a game like poker that incentivizes us to do them, and we're rewarded monetarily, when we actually follow through, it can make it easier to do some of these things that put us in a good mental frame. I think that a few things that would also help players on the mental game side. Number one, just like having the proper expectations for poker. Even the best players in the world will lose like around 1/3 of their sessions. And yet some people sit down every single session expecting to always win. And then they're extremely disappointed and they feel like poker has wronged them on the days they're getting bad cards. It should be more kind of built into your thought process that this might be that 1 in 3 time where my job is to minimize losses. And I shouldn't go off the rails when cards aren't going my way. And just having that expectation up front that this is normal, I think would help a lot of people not force plays that aren't there on kind of those bad days. And then just having a proper appreciation for variance, I think, is also helpful. Like, so many people hate the luck factor of this game, and in the short term it can be annoying, but kind of stepping back from it and realizing that poker's only a profitable game because of variance. Like, for example, there's no money in chess. So if you want to turn this into a side hustle or a livelihood, it's actually a great thing that there is luck involved and that you have to learn to manage it.
Yeah, I love what you said. So many great insights, so many things I want to touch on. I think one of the takeaways is the expectations not being met. I actually did a video about this on the YouTube. I forgot what it's called. It's cool. It's one of my favorite ones I did. But the idea that people are upset when they take bad beats. People are upset when they lose at poker. People are upset when someone sucks out on them or the cards don't fall their way in a certain situation. And the reality is that it's not intrinsically upsetting if you understand the math behind it. If you build this into your expectation, if you build this into your mental arsenal, that this is going to happen, it's expected to happen, you need it to happen, as you mentioned, I love that point. You need it to happen in order for there to be a game that exists to begin with, because if there weren't luck, it would be chess and nobody would play for money. So you need to embrace the variance, you need to appreciate the variance, but you need to also be ready for the variance. And I think it's really important to kind of understand that you're supposed to lose with aces to kings 1 out of 5 times. And so it's not that you're like taking a bad beat when that happens. That is baked into the equation of you having aces versus kings. So it's actually not a bad beat to lose 1 out of 5 times. That's expected. A bad beat is if you lose 5 out of 5 times. But we know that, first of all, people overestimate the times that they lose with these bad beats. They only typically remember the times that they lose because the pain is so much more stark of an emotion than the pleasure, and so it sticks with you, right? So much more, and so people are like overly biased to remembering that situation or only paying attention to it. Nobody tells us. No, I never hear people email me and tell me a story of, oh my gosh, you know how lucky I got at the table the other day? They only tell me the times they got unlucky. How is that possible? Is everyone getting unlucky? In fact, it's actually impossible, statistically impossible, because getting unlucky means that the odds were against you. So that you got unlucky, meaning that like you were a favorite to win. So I should actually get more emails from people that tell me how lucky they got, or just when they win a pot when they're a favorite. I should get 3 times as many emails that people tell me they win when they're a favorite, because they're supposed to win more often when they have the best hand. But I only get emails of people telling me they got unlucky. So people aren't baking into the equation their expectation that they're going to lose, and that causes them to play poorly. I think another part of the mental game too, so this is something we cover a lot in Alec's Academy, in our program, about helping people develop strong routines before the game, during the game, after the game, to be in the best state of mind possible, the best shape possible, the best performance mode possible to play your best poker, because there's a big difference between your A game and your C game. Of course, we want to focus on the strategy to make your A game better, but what if you could just play your A game more often? That would be the equivalent of improving your A game if you could just play your A game twice as much. And we all know there's a huge difference between your A game and your C game. So one of the focuses that we have at Conscious Poker, especially in our academy, is helping people play their A game more often. And one of the core pillars of that is what is going on upstairs during the game. So what is happening during the hand? I remember one of the mentors I worked with about the mental game of poker told me he used to train golfers. And a round of golf, he's like, how long does a round of golf last? I was like, I don't know, 5 hours? It's like, right. So how often, how much time are you spending actually golfing? like hitting the ball or like preparing to hit the ball? And I was like, I don't know, 30 minutes, 10 minutes? Like, it's not that long, right? Most of the time you're doing other stuff. And he's like, exactly. So I work with people on what's happening the other 4.5 hours, the other 4 hours and 45 minutes. And it really made sense to me, and it totally clicked for me, because poker's the same game. You sit there at the table for an hour. How many decisions do you make? I mean, folding 7 deuce off under the gun is not a decision. It's like you can do that in your sleep. You're only making real decisions that occupy mental bandwidth. Maybe like 5 decisions an hour. So maybe for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you're making decisions. The rest of the time, what's going on upstairs? What is playing? What is the story that's playing in your mind? What is happening upstairs with your mental chatter? Are you putting yourself in the position to make the best decision possible when it arrives, or are you have this negative self-talk that is putting you through this vicious cycle of avoiding seeing any opportunities because you're sitting there lamenting or begrudging your luck, and then you're missing the opportunities that are happening in front of you, instead of looking for opportunities and looking for ways to be creative and find ways to exploit your opponents, or developing a game plan, or developing a strategy for what you're going to do, what adjustments you're going to make, what spots you're going to exploit, what your bet size is going to be, who you're going to be 3-betting light, and all of these tactical things that you could be doing upstairs to help you get ready for the situation, because luck is where preparation meets opportunity. Instead of doing that, you're in this vicious cycle of, I'm so unlucky, oh my gosh, I never win with this hand. And then what is that causing? It's causing you to be blind to all the opportunities that are in front of you. And so the mental game is so important, which is why it's such a big focus. So I implore everyone to really think about their self-talk and what's happening during the hands that you're playing. What are you doing to get ready for the hand? And what are you doing to get ready to play the next hand the best way possible? What are you doing to prepare yourself to be ready to make the big decision when it comes?
I couldn't agree more. I think that it would also help players if they knew kind of what their triggers were ahead of time. So some players, if they get bluffed, they totally lose everything, and the next few hands, they feel like they were bullied in that hand, and they retaliate immediately. Other players, it's not getting bluffed. They may find that kind of humorous, but they may be really put off by a player drawing out on them and getting unlucky. So every player has their own things that are more likely to kind of throw them off their game. And I think just having that self-knowledge is so important, because if you know that one of those situations has just happened, you're more likely to be able to step back. You know this is one of the things that sets you off, and then you have some sort of way of dealing with it. Like maybe you go take a walk and take a few hands off. Maybe you take a few deep breaths. Maybe, I mean, Alec, you've coached like some different mantras that people can say that can really bring them back into the present moment and help them kind of leave whatever bad situation has occurred in the past. So just having some sort of strategy so that when those triggers inevitably come up, because they will come up, poker is going to test you and put you in spots that are going to be upsetting, having a strategy kind of ready to deal with it.
Yeah, I think you really hit it on the head. When you make mistakes and you have a weakness, you have a vulnerability, you have a defect of your character, you pay for that with money. So if you have an ego issue because you can't handle someone bluffing you, that they got the best of you, and now you're playing poorly, you pay for that defect in yourself with the loss of money. And so it's really painful because you have this negative feedback loop that just keeps getting reinforced until you learn the lesson. So poker is really a vehicle, I believe, to improve an aspect of your character, because you're just getting this constant either positive feedback if you're able to cope and handle and adjust, or negative feedback if you just can't handle it. And so I think one thing that has really worked for me and for clients is having, like you said, a strategy, having a mantra, having something that you're saying, something conscious that you're repeating to yourself to bring you back to the present moment. So what I do in between hands, and we don't have time to go into all the specific details of applying this, but one thing that you can do to take this away is a takeaway is have something that you're a self-talk, have a plan for your self-talk to bring you back to the present moment and to help you make the best decision possible every time you're faced with one. So saying something to yourself like, okay, I'm present and focused. My goal is to play this next hand the best way possible. I have one singular focus. I care only about what I can't control, and I'm going to play this next hand the best way possible. And you just repeat that to yourself in between every single hand. So every single hand becomes this sort of like mantra flow meditation type of experience where you really have a singular focus and you're optimizing for what you can control, which is the process of making good decisions, and you're just letting the cards fall where they may. You trust that in the long term, if you continue to focus on the process of making great decisions, that you will come out ahead over time. And so I always bring myself back to this singular present moment focus every single hand I play, and I literally go through this mental exercise of repeating this to myself in this flow state, so that every single hand I'm focused on what I can control. My goal is to play this hand the best way possible, and that way when the decision comes, when the big moment comes, when the opportunity comes, I have my focus and I could execute on that, and that helps me make the best decision when I'm faced with one. And I think that's a lot of what it's about, because there's a big difference between knowing the right decision and being able to make it in real time. And there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks that are like, oh, I knew that the play there was to fold. And it's like, okay, well, did you actually fold, right? Oh, I knew you had this hand, but they still called anyway. Oh, I knew he was bluffing, but I folded because you didn't have what it takes to pull the trigger. And so it's easy to know what the right play is if you're scoring on an exam without the emotion, without the ego, without the pressure, without the money. It's easy to know what the right play is. I mean, that's like not that hard to do. To analyze a hand is a lot easier. What's hard to do is to analyze that hand under pressure, when everyone's watching, when there's thousands or millions of dollars on the line, when you're being judged by the public. That's when it's hard to execute, and that's why it's so important to have that mental routine. So I hope that helps with some takeaways.
Absolutely. And I always find it funny when players try to cover all their bases on that. They may not know what the right play is, so what they'll say is, I know you have it, but I call. And then it's a way of like, of course they get the call, and if in the event they pay off badly, then they said that right up front. So it's just a way of, making sure that they're good no matter what their opponent really has in that spot.
For sure. Well, let's move on to point number 3. We can take questions on this at the end. Guys, for those of you that are just joining, thank you for being here. We're covering the 3 fastest ways to improve at poker. Number 1 is fundamentals of pre-flop play. Number 2 is the mental game. And number 3 is your study habits. So this is super important. And this explains, just before we get into it, we'll cover this in a second. For those of you that want to join the show, click the link in the description below. There's a Zoom link. You can pop on our Zoom call. We'll let you in one at a time and take questions after we cover this 3rd point here. I definitely want to get some Q&A with the audience on here. So thank you guys for being here, and thanks for your patience. Study habits are so important. And it's so funny to watch like people that you've played with over time, and you play with them like at one point in your career, and then you play with them again a couple of years later. And it's the lack of study explains why someone could play poker for 10, 15 years and they're the same player they were in the past. They just don't improve. They don't make adjustments. They don't change. They're still in the same place. They feel like they plateau. And it's because they're not improving the game. They're not studying the game. They're not working to actively get better. They're not measuring their results. They're not taking it seriously. They're not treating it like a business. They are just playing the game. They're active participants in the game. And this is true for any discipline in life. If you just go through life, you can only get so good if you just try and do things through experience. You have to actually, especially in a game that's super profound and deep like poker, you really have to get into the math, the nitty-gritty, the equities, the ranges, the hand reading. You really have to get into having a study habit practice in order to see the results you want. And look, for those of you who are here that look at poker like a hobby and you want to play for fun and you want to have fun playing the game and you're happy with where you're at, this might not apply. But if you really want to actually get better, you want to move up from 1.3 to 2.5, you want to increase your hourly rate from $10 to $20 or $20 to $40, or you want to build your bankroll from $5,000 to $10,000, whatever it is, that is going to require you to improve. And in order to improve, you got to study. So Joel, we got we definitely drill this home to both of our clients as well as our students. What do you think? I know there's a lot of ways that people can study, and that's probably what they're wondering. what have you found that works well in your coaching practice to help people improve? What are like the low-hanging, easy ways for people to study?
I might be old school in this way, but I still like poker books, even though they were written like a while ago, and a lot of people write them off as, it was published back in 2000 or 2010. It doesn't apply to today's game. I find that to learn the fundamentals, especially for a beginner player, it's nice to have everything in one place, the way that a book presents. Not to say that these other materials aren't great as well. Like, I think that training sites are excellent. You just have to make sure that it's the right audience. So some training sites, like say Run It Once, are very online focused. So if you're a live player, you may not want to focus on that. The nice thing about conscious poker is it does kind of bridge the gap between live and online. It has a lot of content for both. So just finding the training site that is right for you. Private coaching is definitely a great option, but ultimately, I think that the best form of practice is active practice. It's when you take your own hands that occurred during a session and you bring them home and you use a tool like Flopzilla or Poker Cruncher, and you really go through every single step and make sure that you made the right mathematical plays on each street. And this is how you develop an intuition over time to know what the right plays are. And I just noticed that a lot of the people that are switching over to online poker, one thing that's really throwing them is the speed of the game and the fact that they have to make all these decisions under time pressure, whereas live is much slower. There isn't like a 30-second decision clock that they're up against. And they're like, how can I possibly crunch all of these numbers in real time? I don't have enough time to do it. Well, it's the away from the table study that allows you to develop a certain intuition that ultimately carries you through and allows you to make quick decisions in real time. Even if you're up against time pressure, you may not be able to run all the math, but you can still have a sense of what is the right play because you've looked at it before and you've kind of built up this mental muscle from the practice on your own. And just one other point on this, one thing that makes poker study, in my opinion, more difficult than other disciplines is that the results of your game are so misleading. It's not like when you take a test in school and you study hard and you get a good grade and you get that immediate feedback and okay, I can do this again. For poker, sometimes you play a terrible game and you make a lot of money. Sometimes you play a great game and you lose big. So the results of your session are not a good enough indicator of whether your strategy was effective or not. And you really have to bring your hands home to the lab, look at it in some of these programs, and make sure that you actually played a good game.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so many good nuggets you had. So just for those wondering here, like, how do I actually work through a poker equity calculator? I dropped in a blog. It's free. It's on the Conscious Poker website. You can just Google the best way to study poker, Conscious Poker. Just type all that in Google, you'll find it. But it's in the link in the chat. And it basically walks you through how to use a poker program. And it's a very simple way to work through your own hands. You don't necessarily even need, of course it helps to have a coach or a training site or a study group or like a network. Those things all help, but if you want to start on your own or you want to work in tandem with a coach, you can still work on your own. You can still improve on your own. It's kind of like you can go to the gym without a personal trainer. It helps to have one, and it's definitely good to have one in the beginning to develop best practices. But you can work out on your own and work out with the trainer, or vice versa, or both, or one or the, or whatever. But the point is just to do something. So that's a great resource. It'll help you walk through the basics of how to do that, and that's really important. I still learn things every time I run equities. There's still situations where I'm surprised by, I'm getting the right odds in this spot with these types of hands or against this range of hands that my opponent could have. I'm actually behind and I thought I was ahead and I should be folding more in spots where I'm calling. My frequencies are off. I'm calling too often in this spot. I remember I had one of these, as you guys know, if you're watching my YouTube lately, with this new series, Alec in Action, where I'm playing, high stakes online. And so I'm running some equities in certain spots, and I realized that I was making a mistake on the turn, calling too often in certain spots, and I just ran equities against ranges. So I just looked at, the types of hands that I can have, or the hand that I have against the types of hands my opponent could have, and then I look at my pot odds and I weigh those two things, and I realize like, wow, I'm calling too often here. I got to be folding more, or I'm getting, I'm not calling often, or maybe perhaps I'm not enough in a certain spot. And I think it's really important to go through that process. And it helps to have, it's kind of like golf. It's like if you're going to work with someone, you're going to have someone oversee your game. It really helps to do that in the beginning, because if you learn to golf incorrectly, they say that it takes like twice as long to learn to golf correctly, because you have to unlearn how to golf and then relearn how to golf. Whereas if you just learn how to golf correctly the first time, it's so much easier. It's kind of the same in poker. Like, it's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's just harder to undo poor fundamentals, because people are used to playing a certain way and they've got accustomed to their game. So they have to take one step back to take two steps forward. Whereas if you're just learning to study for the first time, if you just learn the right way, you're just taking two steps forward right away without the one step back. So I think it pays to seek help in the beginning, but it's important that you have some process. And what I always say to clients, and what we encourage in the academy, is just like, look, we know that for most people, poker is a number two in their life. It's not the number one thing you're focused on. Most people are not trying necessarily. I mean, maybe they'd like to be a professional someday, or they would like that. It would be cool. But for a lot of people, it's a side hustle. It's a number two. They have their job and their life, and they'd like to make an extra side income playing poker. They're not going to dedicate 4 hours a day to studying the game. It's just not realistic. So what can you do? What is the 80-20 approach, so to speak? And what I always encourage clients to do is like, look, you're going to go play an 8-hour session, a 6-hour session, right? That's like a normal poker session, especially if you play on weekends or whatever. Instead of playing 6 or 8 hours, whatever it is, cut off your session a half hour early. So go play 7.5, and give me 30 minutes in the lab when you get home. So come home 30 minutes early and run these calculations, run the equities, review your hands, call your friend and talk about it. Whatever study process works best for you, whatever type of learner you are, call your coach, whatever it is, plug into your community, drop your hands on a forum, whatever it is, and do that for 30 minutes. Review 3 of the key hands you play after every session, and just do 7.5 hours and 30 minutes, and watch your results transform. It makes a huge, huge difference, because what gets measured gets managed, and when you're actively trying to improve at poker, it makes a profound difference on your game.
Totally. And I think that online players may be a little bit better about some of these study habits than live players. I think it's been noted some of the time that live poker had just advanced at a much slower speed. It seems to be in kind of a time warp compared to the speed at which online poker advances. And that's because online players are generally doing all of these things. Not to say that live players aren't, but just less of them percentage-wise are. And if they did, it would just make such a big marginal return for them profit-wise. I think that having a network of people that you trust, that you can bounce ideas off of, is super helpful. So whether they're frequent players or whether you're part of a poker community, like for instance, the Conscious Poker Friends group is a Facebook group that allows you to post hands and get real-time feedback from other members, and it's a great way to learn and see if you're making mistakes and try something new next time. One thing that I would say about study tools is that some solvers have become very popular recently, things like PioSolver and tons of other things. And I think these are really powerful tools if you're at a certain level of poker, but I would actually highly recommend people do not start with these tools. I think that too often you put in a certain set of inputs, it spits back outputs at you, and if you don't have kind of the proper training and the right fundamentals to understand why it's giving you those outputs, you probably will misapply them in real time. And the last thing that you want to be doing when you're learning a game as rich as poker is just kind of memorizing solver out. It's a way to really learn some bad habits and also kind of quickly miss the beauty of the game. And I just think that a wave of players may be starting with PioSolver when they could tackle some other tools first to make sure they really understand the rationale behind it.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I totally agree. I think it has its place. I think if you're the average poker player, like watching this, I think it's not necessary. I think most people are probably playing, 1-3, 2-5 live, And if you're relying on if you need Pio in your game, you're in the wrong game. And I'm not discrediting it, because it does play better than humans in certain spots. But a lot of your opponents aren't, they're not playing on that level. And so the strategies and the adjustments might be game theory optimal correct, but it might not win you the most money because your opponents aren't playing the way that the solver recommends. And therefore, making certain plays against your opponents that the solver recommends might not make sense. For example, the solver will recommend, to 4-bet in certain spots with bluffs like ace-4 suited. And that is a correct play mathematically, because you need to have some bluffs, and it makes sense to have an ace in your hand because you prevent your opponent from having ace-king or aces, which are the strongest hands he can have. It's called a blocker, having an ace in your hand. So that makes sense from a theory perspective. But against some players in a 2-5 game, they're just never 3-betting unless they have, queens plus or ace-king. So it doesn't make sense to 4-bet them out of the bluff. You shouldn't be bluffing them. That would be the correct adjustment. So you want to be cognizant of utilizing these solvers. And again, that's why it does help to have oversight when you're using these programs. I just dropped in, and thank you for mentioning the Conscious Poker Friends group. That is a totally free group. So we created that group, and it's totally free to use. You can get feedback from other members all around the world. Sometimes our coaches pop in there and share insights as well. There's, I think, quite a few members in there, 1,500, 2,000 members in that group, where you can talk poker, you can meet up with other people. It's a really great community, and it's totally free. So I encourage you guys to check that out. It's a good starting point if you want to connect with other members and have feedback on your game. This was awesome. I know some people are going to have questions, just to kind of reset the room. If you want to pop on with Joel and I, Coach Joel and I, check out the link in the description. There's a Zoom link. You can click on that link and you can actually hop on the call and ask us some questions. I think we're going to open this up for questions now. And I know Pam has been patiently waiting. So we're going to have her on the Zoom call. But if you guys want to hop on, definitely click the link in the description. We'll let you on one at a time. Otherwise, drop your questions in the chat. We're happy to answer them as well. Really want to open the doors here and be a resource for you guys. Really quick, while Pam is getting on, if you guys like this style of feedback and resources and strategies to improve at poker, I encourage you to check out Alec's Academy. It's at the link in the description below as well. It's the ultimate poker business course to help you turn poker into a profitable side hustle with the goal of making $2,000 a month on the side. We cover these topics and much more. We took a lot of the insights from the modules and covered them here briefly with you guys. So that's a great resource. Our next cohort starts in spring, so we're taking early registration now. We have a discount for people that are joining early. So definitely check that out if you're interested in improving and having us guide you through your journey. You can get access to Coach Joel and myself in a private community with a closed community of like-minded members where we can literally review your hands and your game on a daily basis. So it's an awesome program. I encourage everyone to check it out and apply if you're interested. Pam, not happening. We're giving up on you.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Hey, Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Okay.
Hey, I'm walking my dog. Sorry. So, I'm really interested in. I play almost strictly tournament poker, and probably the most I've paid ever for a buy-in is $600, and I've done all right. I'm just curious about your thoughts. I know you play a lot of cash, so I'm really curious. I'm sure that all the 3 points that you made translate well, maybe even better into tournament poker, especially with the sort of meditative intent that you were talking about earlier, Alex, where you kind of reset after every hand. I'm just kind of looking for some more feedback. Probably definitely interested in learning more about your classes coming up in the spring, I guess you said. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Cool. So what question specifically can we help with? I'll let Coach Joel take this one first.
Well, the hardest thing I have, I've been playing a lot of online recently, and the biggest problem I have are just there's a lot of people that just will not fold a hand, and it's frustrating, and I try not to get too bent out of shape about it. I just realize that it's poker, and you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. And I just don't know what to do when you're at a table with those people. It doesn't matter. They're any two cards people.
Yeah, I totally understand, and that's definitely an adjustment you're going to have to make, especially with low stakes online. Joel, why don't you share some of your insights? I know you coach quite a few people that are playing online. We talked, we've co-coached a couple clients with this very specific question too. What are some insights you have for them?
Definitely. Great question, Pam. I think that games like what you're describing have become even more common during the pandemic. So many people have kind of flocked to poker online, and you're in these pools now with players that, maybe don't have the same fundamentals as you, and they're kind of in there with anything, and they're just there to gamble or to have fun, and they certainly are not playing to fold. That is not why they showed up that day. So, I think what you want to be doing against a table like this is playing a very tight range of hands to begin with, because you're just going to have a lot harder time bluffing these players. You are generally entering into the pot because you think you have a good chance to win the hand at showdown. So you need to be playing really strong cards, big pairs, Broadway cards, hands that are going to have a really good chance of winning, and just less speculative cards. And then also there will be a lot of spots post-flop where when you don't connect with the flop, you're not going to continue in these hands the way that you might against other players that are capable of folding. You're just not going to be bluffing at nearly the same frequencies against players that aren't folding. It doesn't make any sense to play this kind of GTO balanced style of bluffing at a certain frequency when your opponents are playing so imbalanced and never folding. So find the exploit, bluff less.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I just kind of wanted to double down on that idea, and I just wanted to kind of share what some thoughts on that is it's going to feel like your game is open in the sense that you're like, you're raising pre-flop, you're getting 3 callers, and you're just check folding all these flops. And you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so straightforward. This is so boring. There's no creativity. And I just check fold every time I miss. I bet every time I have it. It's like so, obvious what my game plan is. But these people that you're playing against or that you're describing are not making adjustments. And until you see that they start adjusting, in other words, until you see that they start folding your C bets or they start, then you could potentially see bet with a bluff, for example, until you see definitive confirmation that these players are adjusting or the style of the game is adjusting, you should continue with this strategy. So the goal of poker is to make the most money possible. It's to exploit your opponents as much as possible, to take the highest expectation line, to take the line with the highest yield. And that yield in a game where people aren't folding is to check fold unless you have some sort of strong amount of equity. So it's kind of going to be boring. It's going to seem simplistic. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, this is so obvious. This is so easy, frankly. But it's simple, but it's not always easy because you have to execute on the strategy. So I just want to kind of prepare you for how you're going to feel when you make these adjustments. And I think that's necessary.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have another question. This is actually more about being a woman who plays poker. When I go online now, I use names that don't denote what my sex is, and I feel like I'm having a little bit better luck. Has that been your experience with other women that that play poker?
I actually coached several women, gave a keynote to a group of women about their image in poker as well. And I think there's no intrinsic downside to exposing that you're a woman in poker. What's important is to understand the biases that people are going to have, the stereotypes they're going to have, and whether they're right or wrong is a separate subject. The point is that they exist and that people are going to make these judgments. They're going to judge a book by its cover because that's all they have, right? They don't know anything about you. It's a game where you're trying to conceal emotions and you're trying to conceal information. And so people are going to judge a book by its cover, and they're going to label you a certain type of way because they see that you're a woman. So it's important to understand how people are going to play against you, what adjustments they're going to make because they know your sex or they don't know your sex. And then play one level higher. So the goal is not to play on the highest level, it's to play one level higher than your opponents. And if they think that, they see that, okay, I'm playing against this woman, Pam, and they're just assuming that because you're a woman that you're going to play tight, you're going to bluff less, you're not going to 3-bet often, you're going to fold too often to the 3-bets, and they start adjusting to exploit that assumed strategy. Again, whether it's right or wrong is a separate conversation. It's the assumed strategy that they're going to exploit for. You need to be one level ahead of them, and you need to be adjusting to the strategy that they're implementing because they're profiling you in this way. So I think that's what's really important, and I think it actually could be more beneficial, frankly, if you have the right game plan, if they know you're a woman, because it's more obvious how they're going to play against you, because people typically profile women in a certain way at the poker table, and they play a certain way against those people. And so once you know the way they're going to play against you, you can adjust, and that adjustment's going to be very likely to work, because people have a very fixed strategy against your profile. So I think it actually could be advantageous.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. If you think, Pam, that you're at a table full of players that are going to play differently because you're a woman and maybe they plan on playing extra aggressively against you, I think that you can also use that to your advantage. There are a lot of times in poker where you can induce players' aggression when you have very strong holdings and trap them. And maybe at the spot where normally you would raise or re-raise, but if you sense that this is a player who's trying to bully you, don't give him the rope to do it. Basically, just keep check calling, let him bluff the flop, let him bluff the turn, and he'll charge himself better than you ever could. So you really need to make the right read on, is this a player that's playing differently against me, and what is my response going to be against that?
Awesome. Sweet.
Thank y'all so much.
Thanks, Pam. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you in the academy, and thanks for being here. I know there was another caller here. I think it was Marty. Marty, you on? I could have sworn Marty was here. Oh well. If you guys want to hop on, you can click the link in the description and click the Zoom link. Hop on here with us and ask us any questions that you have. Would love to take questions from you and answer a few more here before we go today. Joel, this has been fun. I think this has been really informative. I hope this has helped people on their journey. Fastest ways to study, to improve in poker, one of them being studying, another one pre-flop play, another one the mental game. There's so many others, but these are really the low-hanging fruits. I feel like these are the things that with all of our private clients, probably don't want to necessarily speak for you, but at least with all my private clients, we work on these three things in some fashion, which is why we kind of chose these here today.
Absolutely. And they're things that you have to continue to revisit. It's not like you learn these things and then you're done. Like there's a constant practice to it, to making sure that your mental game is still in tip-top form over time, that you're continuing to study, that you're continuing to reevaluate your pre-flop ranges. Like this work is never fully done, and you always need to be reassessing it.
Yeah, I love that approach, and I actually appreciate that when I'm looking to someone in a new niche to ask about something and consulting or something. I appreciate when they kind of have that mindset that there is no one and done, because it's it's always changing and it's always evolving and you're always trying to get better for something. And I think it's true in poker, right? If you look at it, if you view it like one of those things where it's okay, I did this, I solved it, and I'm done, then you're going to plateau right there. That's when you stop improving, is when you say, I've done enough. And I think it's really important for people out there to look at this poker is really the vehicle, and the purpose is to develop and grow as a person, and it's through your development that you get better at the game, and there's no limit to that. There's always another level you can go to. Marty, thanks for being here. Marty and I work together, and I'm glad you're here, my man. Asking to unmute, and video would be cool. Love to answer a question, catch up with you. It's been a minute.
Sorry about that. I said, how you been doing?
Yeah, great. It's been a while.
It has been a while. We need to catch up at some point, but that's not for everybody else to listen to. I just was curious because I thought some people would want to know. I sort of personally want to know, what is the financial obligation on Alec's Academy? I'm sure it pays back for itself easily, but I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So our program is $2,000 to join, and our goal is to help people make $2,000 a month on the side. So hopefully it pays back for itself. We are doing early bird right now because it starts June 6th, and so we are doing early bird in part of April, and so it's 25% off. And so yeah, that's our program, and it's 8 weeks.
That was the question. I need to do it one of these days. I just would say for people who don't know you as well, having worked with you, it's easily worth it. After I worked with you the last time, I ended up finishing about 70th at a WSOP event last year or 2 years ago, and it worked really, really well. So,
well, thank you.
That was it. I just want to.
I really appreciate it. It sounds like this was paid, but it wasn't. I really appreciate you being on.
I was about to say, I can get the financial remuneration later. No, I wasn't. I just was kind of curious.
No, I really appreciate it, Marty. And we do have to catch up. We've been trading emails, but let's catch up one of these days soon.
Yeah, I'm around all the time. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
We'll catch up. See ya. Yeah, so just a quick rundown of the Academy for those wondering a little more details. It's an 8-week program. It starts June 6th, and we work together in 4 ways. We have 40 video modules that you can watch. They come out 3 times a week, and we have worksheets attached to each one to help you implement what you've learned. We have a private community that's moderated by Coach Joel, another one of our Conscious Poker coaches, Coach Mike, and myself, where we answer questions. We give you feedback on the hands that you play. We teach you how to document your hands to get them to us so that we can review them in a way that's helpful and beneficial to you. And then we also have live coaching calls that are led by me. They're 90 minutes. I get on, I break down the most interesting, significant, famous hands I play throughout my career, and then I walk you through my blueprint for decision making and do open Q&A at the end of those. We also have live poker games with everyone in the Academy where Coach Joel and myself, we hop on and we get to play with each other on Zoom. No rake, of course, and just a way to connect with other members from around the world. We do have, I think, our community is our strong point. I think it's our best attribute, so it's really amazing the conversations that are happening there and the passion for the program and everyone that wants to improve. People love it. It's our best product, and I'm really confident it can help you on your journey. So if you're interested in that, there's a link there. You can click to learn more, connect with me, and we'll make it happen. All right, Michelle, what is up? I've worked with Michelle in the past too, so I appreciate you being here, Michelle. What is up?
I think you're muted, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm asked to unmute really quick.
Okay, I think that we're back in now, aren't we?
We're back in. What's up?
Okay. Number one, I want to thank both of you for hitting on some mental game points that I strongly believe in. Number two is, how do you suggest that an advanced player who's moving up into bigger tournament structures and bigger tournament visibilities, how do you suggest that you prepare, not so much for the physical, but how much do you prepare for the mental grind of a tournament like that?
Yeah, cool. I'll take this one, and I want to have some ideas on this for sure. Hold on. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think that's really important, especially as you start to play in longer tournaments, because bigger tournaments have better structures, and so they last longer. So the physical component of it, in terms of like you have to be in shape to play those long hours, and the mental component of preparing yourself mentally that it's going to be a 12-hour day is a much more real factor. And then the other mental component about the game that has a tactical component as well is that you have to play against better competition now. And so you have to be a lot more dialed in. You can't just have like a lazy focus and just expect that you're going to, adopt a basic, 1-2 punch strategy and it's going to work, because it's going to work against a percentage of the field. But as you know, Michelle, moving up and playing against better players, they're going to put you to the test more often. And if you are like I said, have a lazy focus, it's going to cost you, because you're going to be in certain spots where you're going to catch yourself. If you're caught off guard, next thing you know, you back yourself into a hand and you're like, wait a minute, I'm on the turn and I'm getting barreled again. And why did I put myself in this spot to begin with? And it's going to get really expensive really fast. So I think it's important to prepare for these hurdles that you're going to have to overcome if you want to excel at that next level. So it's important, number one, to be aware of what the challenges are going to be, and number two, develop a game plan for them. Like Coach Joel said, you're going to, when we talked about the mental game, you're going to take bad beats. You're going to be losing at poker, and you're going to have to play through that losing. So what are you doing to get ready for the inevitable? It's not about running away from what's going to happen. It's about being prepared for what is inevitable to happen. And I think it's important to have a game plan for that. And I think that's really where I'd spend a lot of my time focusing. Your strategy gets incrementally better over time. So I think that's also worth working on, like we talked about in the study section. But the mental game is something that you could really make leaps and bounds with if you have a game plan for what you're going to do against these better types of players. How are you going to be treading water against them? How are you going to navigate the hands to avoid playing pots with the better players and focus on preying on the vulnerable? How are you going to be adopting more of a game theory approach against these better players? And how are you still going to find ways to exploit the weaker players at the table? So what tactically do you need to do to make these adjustments in the game? And I think those are all really important things to consider as you're moving up. Coach Joel, why don't I know you're definitely going to have some things to add here.
Yeah, totally. All super important things that you mentioned. I think with tournaments, there's a very important volume component that you need to be putting in, because on any given one day, anything can happen with the tournament, especially in these large fields. And so it's just important that you're putting in enough volume, you're playing in enough events so that you're not counting on placing in any given tournament. You're really putting in the legwork. And so you just maximize your opportunities of getting a few nice scores. And you really have to manage your bankroll in a way where you can afford to do that. So for tournaments, you may want as many as 100 buy-ins at a given stakes, depending on what your goals are. And so just making sure that you're picking a stakes that still squares with your bankroll and will allow you to get the necessary volume so that one day doesn't determine everything. I also just think that on the mental game side, poker is just so unlike anything in everyday life that we encounter. Like, if you play in a tournament and some guy just runs some crazy bluff or makes some horrible call with a gut shot and he winds up knocking you out of the tournament and your $600 buy-in is gone, there's really no parallel to that in everyday life. Like, the closest thing that we have to like an unexpected, cost on a daily basis may be like a speeding ticket or something, but it's rare to just have $600 kind of taken from that. So it's really the brain training that you need to do kind of away from the table to be able to handle these situations, because our brains are not wired to handle them in real time. So making sure that you have a meditation practice, I'd highly recommend exercising before a tournament if possible, so you're in that relaxed state, and eating right, getting enough sleep, just all the things that go into taking care of yourself normally are the same things that are going to be extremely important when you play in a long tournament.
Yeah, well said. Thanks for adding that. Sweet. So I appreciate your guys' time. I think we are going to wrap here. It's been about an hour. We were trying to keep it to that time. Coach Joel, where can they find you if they want to stay in touch other than through Conscious Poker? Is there a way that...
Totally. Well, if you guys, in addition to Alec's Academy, Alec and I also offer private coaching. So our links are below this YouTube video. So if you have more questions about coaching with me, my email is joelwald5, JOELWALD, the number 5 at gmail.com. Feel free to email me, reach out to me. We can set up a quick phone call to see if we can structure things to meet your poker goals, and I can tell you more about my process. But just happy to connect with all of you. through Facebook, through LinkedIn, answer any of your questions. And